Welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 748, the Dutch Grand Prix review. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we're going to review the Dutch Grand Prix. You know how we do this.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's exactly what we do. But before doing that, I have to introduce my guest tonight. Oh boy, you know him. You love him. You know exactly who I'm talking about.
Ripped from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm good. I'm also very orange today, just in case you didn't notice that.
I know. I would have wore orange, but I don't own anything orange, and I look terrible in orange.
Yeah.
Although
I look pretty good in orange, so
yeah,
I got a few orange things,
See, orange is a good color on you. It makes your eyes pop.
Thank you.
Yeah. I do have a Verstappen Arrows hat like you upstairs, and I just totally forgot to get it.
But it wasn't an orange Arrows hat. It was. It was an orange. Yeah.
Yeah, just
stuff.
like yours.
Good stuff. Yeah.
It looks better on you than me, though.
Well, I try. I practice a lot.
Everything looks better on you, Paul. It's, yeah. What are you gonna do? So, hey, Paul, you were on a bit of a holiday with Mrs. Charsley, were you not?
Yes. We went down to San Antonio and the Alamo. Remember the Alamo?
Did you go to the basement?
No, I didn't. Is the basement? No, I tried. I didn't see the stairs. Damn it.
Oh, no basement?
Yep. So went to the old Riverwalk and all that. It was nice, Sometimes it's good just to get away so you don't end up working and doing housework all weekend,
Yeah, right.
So, although the 5-hour journey in, Monday, what was it, Labor Day traffic wasn't the nice ending that I wanted it to be. So
yeah, right.
But we got home eventually.
So you very little passing on the way home.
Well, there's a lot of passing, lots of diversions, lots of frontage roads to this road to come back. If it just got me one spot, it was worth the effort.
You're still on the fastest route, and you'll arrive.
They're wrong when they say that,
I know.
It's very
so
wrong.
True. So did you happen to squeeze in the hectic holiday weekend? Did you happen to squeeze in the Dutch Grand Prix?
I did. I didn't. Yeah, I watched it all, practices, qualifying, the whole race. Yeah, I was able to kick back and relax, and so it was great. Yeah, I was looking forward to watching the cars run around, and I wasn't displeased, actually.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought it up because that's where we're going to start this review. Let's talk about the track, Paul. This is certainly has not been on the Formula One calendar since 1985. Certainly an undulating track, up and down, and banking now. So it's part of what we might call the OG in F1 racing track parlance, along with Spa, Monza, Silverstone, and Suzuka, right in Japan. Right. This is old school track, and I got to tell you, the drivers absolutely loved it. But I want to know from you, Paul, what makes this track difficult to drive, and why the drivers love it so much, even though it's not like a cavalcade of passing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's difficult to drive as much as it's challenging to drive, right? I think they're different things, because challenging can be, very welcoming if you get it right. Difficult is sometimes usually always difficult.
Right.
And it doesn't give you a lot back. And one thing I got to say is, I know that obviously COVID's been a bane on everything, but at least the one thing with F1 is, and I know this track was supposed to be on the calendar anyway, but seeing a lot more of the old world tracks being utilized right now is really fun. And obviously this was brought back because Max is Max, right? But all part of the whole thing, the tracks they design for F1 cars right now just don't give you any emotion, and these ones do. They're challenging, they're irregular, they're not a perfect corner. The camber isn't planned out for months on end to work for this or that. Sometimes it's the wrong place at the wrong time. And the camber, I think, is the key to this track.
Yeah.
Right. the runoff areas, obviously, we didn't have any out of bounds experiences here, did we? But I think the utilization of how powerful camber can be is really showed off. Even in an F1 car, with all its downfalls, any little bit of camber is going to give you that much more. So we saw the different lines, through the big bowl corners. You saw the challenging, some of the switchbacks, which weren't flat, unless you had new tires, light fuel, and that's why the drivers liked it when, like Lewis said at the end of the race, right? So it's like, oh, this track is just so much fun, on low, because he can just literally flat foot it, right? But when it's not, those tracks, those little tricky little lefts and rights where the car's just not quite flat, it's like, well, how not flat is it? And what can I get away with? We saw obviously in the qualifying too with the Williams cars, they tried to just take that just bit too much chunk of entry speed, and the car came around on them. And that's the challenge. The wind is the challenge. The surface with the sand makes it slippery, so it's a changing dynamic as well. But yeah, really the irregularity, the camber changes, the constant, apart from the main straight, you're just busy the whole time, right? And you got to get a flow, just like Monaco. You just got to be thinking 2-3 corners ahead, and that's what makes the blood flow in any driver, really, knowing that you're gonna make a difference. This track, the driver can make a bigger percentage difference than some other tracks like we're going to go to, like Monza, etc., where the car is really going to be extremely dominant on how well the car does in the racing and qualifying. So yeah, it's really when you sink your teeth into and challenge, and it was different than what these guys have done. And I said, with the camber, with the bowls, with driving around the outside is the right way. It's like, that's not ever seen in Formula One nowadays. And remember, like Tarzan, the first turn, I always remember that clash between Andretti and Hunt there. And I'm trying to, and I don't know why, I can't remember. Was it Hunt was on the outside and Andretti was on the inside, or vice versa? Yeah. So Hunt was on the outside, and how mad he got at Andretti for taking him out. We saw a very similar situation in the race with Norris as well, where it could have ended just as bad, right? So yeah, that was great to be able to see different areas of the track to pass on than is norm. So yeah, lots of things. I thought I loved, like we say at Monaco, I just like watching one car go around there. It's interesting. Yeah.
I've been quoting your brother for years and his comment about Spa,
right?
That it's perfect in its imperfection. It's what makes it a perfect track is its imperfections, and all of these OG tracks are like that, right? Zandvoort, no different. Silverstone, you think of Suzuka in Japan. The things that make it so wonderful is the imperfections about it. And instead of all this straight sort of sterile, 45-degree turn, this sort of thing that
miles of runoff,
right.
Yeah, it's great that they're allowing Formula One cars to still race at these tracks. And I think generally, I think we enjoy it better that way.
Yeah, for sure. And, you can't review the race there without talking about the fans. My gosh, Paul. The Dutch fans, and look, there's a whole host of reasons. Max, certainly hometown hero, but Max and the Dutch fans, for whatever reason, the Dutch fans, give anyone a run for their money as far as being fans of a sport. They follow him everywhere. We see him in Austria. We saw him at Spa. We saw him everywhere in a sea of orange. But this weekend in Zandvoort was just, I haven't seen that kind of fervor since Schumacher in Germany.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I've ever seen that percentage.
Right.
We've definitely seen, Mansell Mania, Schumacher Mania, Senna Mania at Brazil, might be the closest, I think, where they're just all focused on one guy.
Right.
Obviously there's not many other Dutch drivers but he's, we've had Dutch drivers in Formula One before, but none like what we have with Max. None that won and had a chance at a championship, right?
Yeah.
So it's fantastic how much they support their one driver, and it is just orange everywhere. We've seen it, as I say, at Hungary and Spa. We've seen glimpses of it, and all those all got together and they all showed up at the track at one time, and it was great. It was great.
And just kudos to the organizers of that event and the way that they moved traffic, the way that they got people in and out, and it's just, I think F1 can learn a lot from the way that the organizers and promoters held that race, the way they managed it. I saw, post race pictures, and they're pretty clean and pretty tidy, and
they didn't have to have Vettel out there picking up their trash.
Right.
That's good.
And just I don't know. There's a lot to be learned about how to host a race like that, and and certainly Silverstone with Lewis, it's up there, with the fans.
Yeah.
And
it's hard to be mad at the Dutch, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of is.
It's like they kind of do everything pretty well. You meet them, they speak English very well. Peter Reaver just did a little poll on who speaks English the best, and I said, I agree. I think the Dutch, that they just do everything very, very well, but they don't get too big of in their boots about it. And as you said, the execution, thinking outside the box, all those bicycles that came to the track rather than cars. I mean, that's going to help a ton, right? Making that promote that, try and push people to do that, put incentives out for that, and everyone enjoyed the weekend all the better for it, I think.
Yeah, just fantastic.
An ex F1 driver, Jan Lammers, who was a very good sports car driver, drove for Jaguar for a long time. He's one of the main guys at the track, so he's been around Formula One racing a long time. So it's nice to hear his name mentioned again. And
it was
execution of this.
It was good to hear that Jan, because he did a great job. He really did, and you're right, a damn handy driver himself. In sports cars. So what a great event! It can't be understated how good this event was, and it was so good, and such an epic view of those fans and the support, and just going crazy. And yet not a lot of prolific passing, and that was okay, because the entire event was just such a good event, and the track was awesome, and the racing was great, and just everything came together, and it was just a great weekend. So kudos to everyone, all the Dutch fans that were there in their orange and in their capes, their Jumbo capes, and it's just fantastic. Yeah, kudos to you guys. You guys are some of the best fans out there, and makes you very proud if you're Dutch.
And the Dutch are very big in racing in general. They're not a big, a lot of trumpets about it, but they really are a lot of involved in sports car racing, etc., and touring car racing with the Coronels and people like that. So it's great. They really are a big force in racing, but kind of under the radar just a little bit. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about the race, the way it finished. Let's start off with Red Bull, Max Verstappen in P1, Sergio Perez in P8. After a very tidy qualifying pole position, Max converted that to a win with a good start, keeping Lewis behind him. And then he controlled the race through pace and tire preservation. He got back around Bottas when he had to, in order to make their strategy work. I think that was a key moment for Red Bull, ensuring that they don't get the undercut. And you may have had some concern, rightfully so. I had a little concern after his stop when they brought him back out on the second stop on hard compounds. And I wasn't quite sure how that was going to work out versus Lewis's mediums. But Max seemed to be fine on the harder rubber and really targeted Lewis, irrespective of what Bottas was doing. Red Bull didn't have a wingman there for Max, so it was two Mercs against him. They knew they would use Bottas to try to, upset the apple cart there, and but they didn't fall for the bait. They stuck to their guns. They pegged Lewis as the marker, and they followed that and executed incredibly well. I think the team did a great job, as did Max, of avoiding the strategy and tactics that Merck was throwing at them on the fly to take a win in his home Grand Prix. Also, I think it goes as, Max just is a relatively cool character. I think he can get certainly hot-headed and frustrated, and we certainly have seen that in the past, but he's matured. He's 23, and you got to think of the pressure on him, Paul, at his home Grand Prix with tens of thousands of fans all there looking for one result. And, he just seemed to take it pretty much in stride, went out there, put down a fabulous qualifying, terrific race, didn't bat an eye. Red Bull executed strategy well, didn't quite fall victim to Merck's brilliant strategy that they're known to do. Just a great race all in all.
Yeah, he definitely has a lot of grace under pressure for sure. I don't think he compartmentalizes that stuff, and I don't, he's not going to be running up and down the main straight with the flag and jumping into the crowd, etc. He's just not that kind of guy, right? And I think that kind of helps him at this point. He's never won a world championship, and it's serious business, and that's all he really, really cares about. And he appreciates what's going on there. Absolutely. If he was a jerk, then the Dutch fans, I don't think would be as far behind him. So I don't think he's dismissive of it, but he keeps it at a place that doesn't affect where he has driving. We saw it in his first ever Grand Prix win, right? I mean, how many laps did he have Kimi Räikkönen snapping his heels to win his first ever F1 race? That's a lot of pressure, and he didn't put a foot wrong then, and he rarely does. So yeah, definitely just kind of continuing the blend of what he's doing to try and claw back the points from Lewis, getting the opportunity. The team have a great car there, and he's doing a great job with that car. Happened to be, luckily for him, it happened at his home track, and he was able to soak some of that in afterwards. But there's still work to be done. There's another race in 3 days time, so he's automatically already thinking about that, and he'll appreciate it, as I said, but maybe he'll enjoy a bit more at the end of the year rather than he can right now.
Yeah, no, and it's a really good point you bring up. Sometimes he doesn't seem as animated about when he's asked about the crowd and the fans and all that. And like you say, he's not climbing fences and running out and surfing the crowd and stuff like that, which, there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't think I think Max is a pretty singular focus kind of guy. And it's just not his personality. Whereas other drivers like Lewis loves to interact with the crowd, loves to engage that crowd.
He thrives on it. Yeah.
He thrives on that. That's energy. That's like fuel to Lewis, right? That adulation, and he loves it. And whereas Max, he derives that energy and from some other place, and it's probably a personal place, that he drives that singular focus, and it's just kind of his personality. He's not that effusive when it comes to those kind of things. So, but I don't for a second think that it's not important to him, or it doesn't mean the world to him. I know, sure. it does,
And for him and Lewis, they came from very different places, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Lewis, obviously his dad didn't drive. His dad just put in a lot of effort for him to go karting, and Lewis just had natural ability. Max obviously always had natural ability anyway, but he also had the guidance of a ex-Formula One driver as a dad to pretty much groom him to be the best Max he could be, which is what he is,
Right. Yeah. In a lot of ways, Lewis is writing his own playbook here, and having to sort of feel his way into F1 in that sense. Whereas Max, with a dad that's already been there, kind of knows the ropes,
right?
And the to-dos and not to-dos, like not fly over a Turkish opera, those kind of things. So anyway, fabulous.
Or fly
race.
over the back of a Formula One car in Brazil. Dad did a lot. Made a lot of mistakes for not to repeat. Also, so
yeah, that's so true. But fabulous race from Max, great win, and home turf, and I'm sure he's pretty pumped heading into Monza. His teammate, no doubt, Sergio Paul had a great recovery drive from the pit lane start with a new engine, I might add, and he provided most of the day's fun with some great passing all the way through the midfield. He even managed, Paul, to score 8th. He had that extra stop where he flat spotted his tires.
Right.
So,
trying to pass the Haas of all things, I think it was.
Yeah. It was, he had those two moments. He had the one with Mazepin, right, where he locked up, and I believe he was on the hards there. So
he was going for a long run at that point in time, which he couldn't do.
Yeah, exactly. So he had to box because he flat spot him. Certainly he was on his game. The shame of the whole thing is that he shouldn't have been in that position anyway with Saturday's missteps, right? So I was a little surprised that everyone voted him driver of the race. It was a great recovery drive, no doubt about it, and he's in the quickest car. Key number one about the strategy, though, that unfolded is they had Sergio out running a few laps on hards. So they could kind of see right there
Right.
what it was going to be. Now, Toto said he was pretty surprised. They boxed early and they tried that undercut again. They tried to box Lewis again early, thinking that they put him on mediums and they may force Red Bull to go with softs on Max. Because Toto was saying, the hard was a little bit of an unknown. And so they kind of were hoping that maybe they'd force Red Bull to put on softs, but they had running information on Sergio's hard, and they were looking at Ferrari's lap times, and Ferrari was setting down a marker too, and so they came out on hards, and I think it caught some folks a little off guard there.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously the best information is to have Sergio on it, right? Every car, you can mark another car, another brand, but every car is so different.
Yep.
You can learn some things, but you can't trust everything. And so I don't know how much information Sergio was able to give back and forth.
Yeah.
But maybe because he had to get rid of those hards, obviously he locked up a tire, he trashed the tire, but the other three tires were fine.
Yeah.
Maybe they were able to evaluate that tire after it came off of Sergio's car and have a look, and then compare it to lap times, etc. That's absolutely what they will be doing, and to make that decision. Obviously, the stronger hand is if they know they can get Max out ahead of Lewis, it's going to be very difficult to get by because he does have a very, very fast car, and Lewis had to claw back some time still to even get back on his tail to even have a go at him. So by that time, I think Max could trust that he could control Lewis's pace no matter what Lewis could throw at him, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, despite being on a faster tire, Lewis was certainly setting some quick lap times. But I think Max managed those tires and managed them really well. Not really the soft hard compound strategy worked real well for them. And I think it worked well for Leclerc, but we'll get there. Great race. Let's talk about Mercedes while we're talking about Lewis and strategy. You had Lewis Hamilton in P2, Valtteri Bottas in P3. Lewis seemed, thereabouts, to be honest with you, all day. And while he couldn't get the jump on Max at the start, the team used just about everything they had in their playbook to try to get Lewis around Max with two cars working against one. But a slow stop, Paul, on that first undercut attempt just kind of scuttled that offer,
Yeah.
And it was tough. In the end, Lewis wasn't happy on his mediums after the second stop, despite the initial pace he had, but he couldn't make a lot of headway on Max's harder times that Max was setting. And even though they weren't able to pass Max, I still think Lewis had a terrific drive, given the struggles that he'd missed quite a bit of track time earlier in the weekend. Right. And I think, certainly he came out and was throwing down some terrific lap times, keeping him honest. I don't know, maybe the max is around 3 seconds, 4 seconds at most, but I think Lewis was going for it and really driving hard to get up there. But it just, that first stop that was a little slow, that didn't work. And then, Paul, as you mentioned, that second stop, I don't know. It was early. I think Toto said they had a whiff of a possible win, and they came in, and I don't know. It didn't really pan out, the strategy.
Yeah, no, it didn't. I think they got obviously a slow stop is a slow stop, and as close as the margins are, that's tough to claw that back that time, right? Especially, considering how quick Max is anyway, ultimately, and then running behind another car. The second one was the worst one. I think that they did pit super early, it seemed, for those mediums. And I think just to try and surprise the Red Bull team, but they can always react to the next lap. And I think they were all ready for a plan of attack no matter what. I don't think they were surprised by anything really. But what did happen was when Lewis came out in that traffic, that first lap out is the important lap because, Max is coming in. Yep. That next lap. If Max stayed out one more lap, Lewis probably could have gotten the lead, but because Max instantly reacted to it and Lewis got held up in traffic on that ultra important lap, the next lap when Max came in, he came out and didn't have any traffic at all. Right. And Lewis already had fought back through that traffic already, but the damage had been done, right? And I think the strategy had to be perfect for Mercedes to pull something off. And I think they could have pulled it off, if they had maybe adjusted things, but hindsight is, what it is, hindsight. But yeah, Lewis was throttling that thing as hard as he could. And I do think he got the bad rub in traffic, it seemed. And as I said, as close as those margins in, you lose half a second behind one guy that Max didn't, you've got to somehow make up a half second just to get back to where you were. Yeah. And so I don't know why it was working out that way, but I definitely think Max got the tug of the lap traffic rather than Lewis did.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it did catch him out a little bit. And he brought it up, and so clearly it was an issue for him.
I mean, I think the Bottas tactic was working really well. If Bottas could have held off Max that for one more lap, I mean, Lewis is coming on that lap that finally at the end of the lap when Max got by, but he made up like 2.5 seconds in that one lap on Bottas. And I was thinking Bottas would overslow him in the next to last corner somehow, because he needed, if he could have got some kind of launch, some kind of extra electric power to try and keep Max at bay, it would have really worked well, but he just didn't have anything left in the car to be able to hold Max off. And then that made it super easy or made it easy enough for Max to get around and not allow Lewis to get within the 1 second clutches.
Yeah. It didn't quite work by switching Valtteri to that one stopper, and it was close, but it didn't quite work out. And and then both of them stopped late for fresh tires.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And Lewis ends up getting fast lap. It was kind of interesting because I think, by the way, on Sky Sports, I know Martin wasn't there, but JB said him. I thought JB did a great job.
He did.
Yeah, doing a lot of great color.
Job, it was very nonpartisan to everything. Was very wasn't playing favorites. Was calling a spade for sure.
Yeah. No,
I appreciate that. I think.
Yeah, kudos to JB. I thought he did a great job, and he had pointed out he wasn't quite sure why they did that. With Bottas, it's one thing, but then they had to tell Bottas, "Don't go for a fast lap," because Lewis already has it. Don't go for a fast lap, and he did. And he ends up getting it, even though he slowed down a third.
Right.
But then they boxed Lewis, and JB was kind of like, "Gosh, I don't know. It's such a tough call because anything can happen in a pit stop. You could miss, cross start a wheel nut,
right? Or
Max could have a bobble, and you aren't there to capitalize.
Yeah, it gets a flat tire, slow puncture. Yeah, I always agree with that. We've talked about that before. Where I can't remember what race it was. It was a few races ago. I'm like, I just wouldn't do it. It's like if you're not pressuring the guy ahead, he's not pressured to make a mistake. He just rolls to an easy victory.
Right.
But, we saw how traffic could be. You could come up behind Mazepin again. Something stupid could happen. Yellow could come out, whatever. But if you're not there to be in the fight, there will be no fight.
Right.
I think, maybe because Bottas got the fastest lap, they changed their tune and decided just that it was a really low percentage that Lewis is going to get to Max. But for sure, if he pitted, he would get that extra point, claw that extra point, which could be important. But basically, if Bottas hadn't have played that fast lap, I have a feeling that they wouldn't have brought in Lewis.
That's kind of what I was thinking too, because there is a risk factor there.
Yeah, there's always a risk factor.
And Mercedes, they're known for just wicked strategy. They're brilliant at it.
Yeah. It's gonna get someone one day.
Yeah.
Someone is gonna come in for that fast lap, and they're gonna end up with 0 points because of it.
Yeah. It was because Mercedes always known for wicked strategy, and kudos to Red Bull for really answering that strategy. They did a brilliant strategy of their own in tacking, but I think you're right, Paul. Had Bottas not gotten fast lap, I really wonder if they would have brought Lewis in.
Yeah, so, I don't think they would have. If someone else had got the fast lap, I still don't think they would have done it. Yeah, I don't think they should have done it anyway. But
yeah. So, all right. Next up, we're going to talk about AlphaTauri. Pierre Gasly, P4, Yuki Tsunoda, DNF. Pierre had a terrific qualifying, Paul, and then he converted that into a fantastic race result, finishing best of the rest in 4th place with a quiet but inspired drive that makes you wonder just how long he'll stay at the junior team in favor of a team that can actually win. But the trouble there is there aren't any seats open at Merc, Ferrari, or Red Bull, you know?
Right.
And so right now, patience has got to be the name of the game for Pierre, and it's got to be a bitter pill to swallow with performances this good.
Yeah, it is tough. I was thinking about it today. I'm like, where does he go? You know, which team is better? You know, the Ferrari, are you going to replace Carlos or Charles? No. At Red Bull, obviously Sergio would be, you know, for some reason, Red Bull, I just keep saying, we're not bringing Gasly in, right?
Yeah.
So they've basically blocked their own best driver on the grid, you know, second best driver on the grid. And then we've got the Mercedes, which obviously they just announced that Bottas is going to Alpha. So you got to believe that George and Lewis are now going to be at Mercedes. He's not going there either. So now it's a mid-pack team. He's not going to McLaren, you know, unless they kick out Ricciardo for some reason. And
Maybe
now he's
Alpine.
nearly, yeah, maybe. But they love Ocon. He's won a race for him, and they love Alonso.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe in the close distant future, but for right now, for this year, next year, he's got nowhere to go, which is unfortunate because he's that good. He deserves that, you know. But I think it says something about the grid also, that there's that many good guys driving on the grid right now, you know, where a guy like Gasly isn't a slam dunk in a top 3 team because there's so many other good guys that you couldn't say, well, you know, you can't guarantee that Gasly is going to come in and be faster than him. So.
Yeah, it's tough. I was thinking, well, he's a Frenchman. Maybe Alpine makes sense. Maybe not next year. But if Red Bull doesn't pick him up the year after that in 23, I don't know. But, you know, there's a couple thoughts there. You know, certainly Daniel Ricciardo's not quite panning out the way they wanted it to at McLaren.
Right.
Maybe Fernando will hang it up. You don't know. So
that would be the one most likely scenario is right. A couple of years down the road, Alonso rehangs his helmet up and Gasly's there. Yeah.
And Gasly's there. He's a Frenchman. It's a French team. Yeah. It seems to make sense to me, but it's unfortunate. So I think for Pierre, he's got to be patient, but what a terrific drive this weekend. I mean, all weekend he had great qualifying, was there. And it just befuddled me why the world voted Sergio Perez driver of the day, because Pierre just had a fabulous
I mean,
run.
Sergio's making up for a mistake, maybe by the team, maybe himself, whatever. But his qualifying is still not quite there, you know. And so making up for a mistake shouldn't really buy you into being driver of the day, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But
No, I thought Pierre did great. Yuki, still struggling with qualifying, speaking of that, had a lot of work to do from the back and was making actually some decent progress, and then he had a power unit issue, forced him to retire the car. Pierre didn't have the pace to run down Alonso, but with all, the other way around. Leclerc didn't have the pace to run down Gasly. And that meant that, it was really kind of just a quiet race for him. And maybe that's why he kind of went unnoticed a little bit, Paul, because, he wasn't in the heat of the battle with Lewis and Max. He was in 4th, but he wasn't really under massive attack from the Ferraris either. And it was kind of a quiet race and easy to overlook.
Quiet race, but you're 4th on that grid. That's you're flying. You're flying at that point. Whether anyone's chasing you or not, you're flying. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's great. All right. Let's see. Let's talk about Ferrari. Charles Leclerc, P5, Carlos Sainz at P7. Leclerc and Sainz both had a go at each other at the start, but it was Leclerc who rose to the top with a very handy 5th place to Carlos's 7th. Leclerc said he was actually surprised at how long the medium compounds lasted, but said the soft-hard compound strategy was the way to go. And that was a bit of a bellwether, as you mentioned earlier, not totally, but a little bit of a bellwether move for Red Bull to make the call they did on hards, because it seemed like the Ferraris also seemed to manage their pace. The team did split their strategies, with Leclerc boxing later than Sainz, but this left Sainz vulnerable in the waning laps of the race, and a fresher tired Fernando Alonso was able to get around Carlos, and Carlos is a little bit of a sitting duck there in 6th.
No one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Exactly. Yeah. The Spaniards going after each other. It was, a bit of a ragged weekend, really, for Carlos. spent much of the day defending instead of attacking, like Charles was trying to do. Not quite sure where the loss of pace was for his Ferrari. And in the headlines today, they're saying that Carlos and Ferrari are going to take a deep look at where they lost the pace and what happened there. He wasn't comfortable in the car. He said he lost the comfort with the car from Friday. And when you juxtapose that with the way the car Charles was, I mean, Charles was like 30 some odd, 40. I don't know. He was quite a ways ahead of Carlos.
Right. Yeah, it was by the end of the race. Yeah, at least half a minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's unusual, but maybe it's all the cars will have a different feeling to them, and every driver needs a different feeling from the car. And obviously, this is a pretty unique circuit, so maybe they just didn't gel together. I don't think, certainly not time to panic or anything like that. We've seen plenty of great performances out of Carlos so far, and Charles obviously set the stage of where that Ferrari car was, which I think has been very promising. You know, I mean, it really is. They've really come a long way with that car, and these guys have something to fight with, and I'm sure Carlos will be right back with it for Monza.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, despite the issues that he did have, the team, as you mentioned, had a good haul of points, and both finished ahead of their rival McLaren. So Ferrari this weekend takes third place in the Constructors' Championship away from McLaren. And now, Paul, they're heading to Monza with a points lead in the Constructors' Championship, best of the rest. Now,
the one thing I changed my shirt from orange to red. Then
I know. Yeah. Now, one thing I would say is it's a power circuit. Mm-hmm. And one wonders if Ferrari can hang in there with the papaya.
Used to be
cars.
A big thing for Ferrari. Now that's maybe a bit of a.
I don't know if they're bringing out a big engine development for Monza. They were delaying those upgrades, and my hunch, I want to say they were targeting Monza, but I can't remember. So we'll see this weekend.
Well, for sure they'll always have their new engines being fit in the car for Monza, right?
Yeah, you would think so. Next up, Alpine, Fernando Alonso in P6, Esteban Ocon P9. Fernando had one of his good starts and was gunning for Ocon, but then went high on the banking in turn 3 to not only pass Ocon, but nab Giovinazzi too. So that worked out well. That was a great pass. Alonso then set about managing tires and getting accused of being slow by Ocon, which prompted Fernando to say, "Oh, well, I can go faster. I was just saving my tires."
Right.
Classic Alonso.
Knew that. I mean, it was like, you've been schooled, Mr. Ocon.
Yeah.
It's he can go faster, but we saw as it worked out in the stints, Alonso gapped Ocon by quite a bit by driving the way he did on the tire initially. So lesson learned.
Welcome to the majors. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Fernando totally turned it on late in the race. And hunted down signs for a pass and P6. They had great performance, Paul. Yeah, and really, on balance, Alpine had a really good weekend here.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. And I mean, Ocon had a good race, fell a little flat at the end there, but both of them were pretty handy. That start was pretty, if you jumped around and all the in-car stuff, that start, they were banging into each other. It was a NASCAR race out there. I'm surprised everyone made it through without the wings falling off. So it was pretty fun. There was some contact going in, argy-bargy, as our friend Calvin Fish always likes to say. So, I thought it was a great performance by Alonso, intelligent performance by him in making the tires work for the entire stint to his maximum. And then, as we know, when he needs to turn it on, he does, and just picks up a car by the scruff of the neck and throws it down, another 50 feet down the road than anyone else can do. So it was really fun. I really loved Alonso's race, actually.
Yeah, he's just wickedly talented.
Yep.
It's amazing. Esteban wasn't too happy about being held up with Fernando for much of the race, was looking for the team to let them swap places. They didn't do that. At one point, Esteban said he had a plastic bag in his wheel. That's never a good thing. But in the end, Esteban couldn't hold off Perez and lost a spot late in the race, but it was a much-needed points haul for Alpine. They definitely need to get in the hunt and in amongst it and pull themselves out. And in the hands of Alonso, they did that this weekend. It was a great result.
Yeah, it definitely was.
Let's talk about McLaren. Lando Norris, P10. Daniel Ricciardo, P. Where did he fit? Yeah, P11. That's it. So McLaren.
Nice, Ron.
Yeah, not a great weekend here. Not exactly the weekend result that the team wanted or needed, to be honest with you. They lost third place in the constructors' title with a lackluster performance and lack of pace. Ricardo had some smoke coming out of his car early on, and I think maybe it was Pierre Gasly or somebody said that, or Leclerc or somebody was saying that it was leaking a little oil, but not to worry. The team said everything's fine, and it did seem to clear up as the laps went on. Dan said, though, Paul, when he came up to the line and went to pull the clutch and it wasn't working. So his preferred clutch paddle had an issue. He did the start with his other hand, and that was a big part of losing the position to Russell off the line.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Wow. So they got a fail safe on the clutch actuator.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. So
I think it was Vettel that was complaining about smoking.
Oh, was it Vettel? Okay.
I think it was.
Yeah. Could have been.
Mm.
You know, Marshall
We'll never know. There's no way of ever finding out. So we'll just have to...
never. Yeah. So not a terrific race. Lando was on fresher tires late in the race. Despite Dan holding ninth for much of the time, the team did swap places and let Lando make a run for it. And then they asked Dan, okay, now you will hold up Sergio Perez, right, Dan? He's like, got it.
Jedi mind trick. You will.
Yeah. Yeah, this isn't the position you're looking for.
Yeah.
But in the end, both McLarens tried to hold off Perez pretty aggressively, with Lando making contact with Sergio, but they both got dropped by the Red Bull, fell back to 10th and 11, and then they fell back into fourth place in the constructors' title. Like I said, the upside that unless Ferrari make a big power unit gain in Monza, McLaren could find itself on happier hunting ground in Italy. But that's on balance, though, not a great weekend for the team.
No, it wasn't. They showed a couple of signs in qualifying and in the race that they looked like they had pace, but then in the end they just didn't have a consistent pace to be able to fight it. And it's one they need to go back and analyze quite a lot, because this is something they need to figure out. As you said, going to Monza, the car's pretty good in a straight line, so that should be actually a pretty good track for them. But they need to solve all the issues, because this fight for the championship is so tight, and you can't have an off weekend really, else, as we saw with Ferrari, they can leapfrog you in a heartbeat. Yep,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of not a great weekend, Aston Martin, you had Lance Stroll in P12, Sebastian Vettel in P13. It wasn't really their weekend. They struggled all weekend long with pace. Vettel tried to make the best of it and make an event out of it by on the banking against Kimi's replacement, Robert Kubica, but ended up in a spin right in front of Valtteri Bottas, I might add.
Right.
That was
go low. No, go high. Valtteri.
Go high. Yeah. Way to go, Cole. That was tough. In defense of Seb, he started way back because he got balked by the Haas duo, mainly Mazepin, during quali, and this meant that he was playing catch up all day. Just didn't have the pace to make any progress really forward. It's tough.
No, it was. I wondered. I thought he'd still make some progress, but he didn't seem to be able to get out of the depths of the deepest of the midfield, and so I think it was a pretty bad race for Seb. I thought, the Mazepin block there was pretty brutal, and we didn't really talk about that, but there's something's got to be sorted about this. People just coming to a stop in the last corner, and they got to figure a way of making that work without completely just throwing out penalties to everybody. We need to just be able to get through qualifying without this impedance and without this backing up to the backup to the backup to the backup, right? I mean, it basically backs up all the way to pit lane this time. So they need to have some kind of, and I don't know how, I'd have to think about it, but they have to have some way of formulating some kind of rule that stops this happening, because not only does it impede, it can actually be bloody dangerous. So a stopped car on a track with a car on a qualifying lap meeting in the last corner of the track is not going to be pretty one time,
Right. Yeah, it wouldn't be good at all. And it got to the point where they were all just going down to the end of pit lane, just sitting there,
right,
just waiting, for a gap. And if they're going to do that, then maybe the FIA says, okay, well, that's fine. Then on lap qualifying will have, like those on ramps on American highways. They have the red light, green light,
Yeah.
and it's busy rush hour traffic, and you come up a red light, and then it'll green light, and then a car can go onto the on ramp.
Right.
So maybe that's what they need to do. If you
And you
guys are
gotta
all
go.
going to stop there,
And you have to go.
you have to go with the green light, and and they give everybody a 5-second delta or a 6-second delta.
Or just have the qualifying lap start from pit lane.
Yeah.
Go.
Go. Yeah, right.
There is no complete lap. You start in pit lane, you finish at the finish line. That's your lap.
Right. That's your lap. Go.
Get some temp in there, boys.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Lance equally struggled on a track with little passing, and that's always he had bad quali. And with a track with little passing, that's always going to be hard to recover from. He spent all day basically behind Russell's Williams, and then he spent a lot of his day trying to figure out where the pit confirm button was. And but
is it the go button? Is it green or the red? Do I cut the red wire? No, Lance, no. Where did you get the scissors from?
He was like, Brad, the OK button is the pit confirm. It's like, yeah, Brad, come on, Brad. So anyway, but in fairness to Lance, man, I listened to the radio with them spelling out the whole complex menu setting and button sequence. Quite honestly, I had a hard time following what they were saying.
Especially when going through Zandvoort with you going up and down and.
Yeah, the guy's going 150 miles an hour, and you're giving him like three or four strings of basic code writing that he's got to put in their menu and button pushes, and to hard reset your iPhone, press the up and down button and then the right button and hold. And it's like, my gosh,
it is crazy because I know we've had discussions about gentleman drivers, but sometimes, literally, like you can go races. Did you see your lap time? Oh no, I didn't see anything. They can't even see their lap time. These guys are resetting computers and, diagnosing, soldering stuff on the back of the thing. But, there's a difference between, and they're driving a Formula One car versus someone driving a little GT4 car or something like that. It is quite funny to see the difference. You're literally going past start finish line and you don't have the wherewithal to be able to actually look at a lap time flashing right before your eye. No, I'm just holding on. Wait for the breaking point. You told me to brake at the one. That's what I'm doing. All I can focus on right now.
Come on, Brad. All right.
So there's a lot of busy work goes on in those cars. That's for sure.
Yeah. Let's see. Alfa Romeo, Robert Kubica, P15, Antonio Giovinazzo, P14. Paul, probably a name you didn't think you'd hear this weekend driving around. It's not an easy task to jump into an F1 car when your last outing was 2 years ago in 2019. But that's exactly what Robert Kubica had to do as he stood in for a Kimi Räikkönen who tested positive for COVID. Seemed to be no symptoms or asymptomatic. But anyway, on balance, Paul, I don't know what anyone expected out of Robert, but I thought he had a solid race, to be fair. And had a good battle against Vettel and Yuki Tsunoda, and ends up down in 15th. And never having not been in a car for 2 years is pretty good.
Yeah, no, he hasn't been in a Formula One car. He's done some practices, right? But he has been, and I've seen him in a couple of the races. He's been pretty active in sports cars, so he's been getting a lot of miles. So he's up to stuff there. It's not a Formula One car, obviously, but he's been active. He's been racing. He's been battling, etc. And obviously, he didn't even have a complete weekend, right? He jumped in practice 3. Yeah. So it's not just like he literally, had 20 laps and okay, go race. Yeah. Right. So I thought it was a great job by Robert. Actually, I was happy to see him. Obviously, this is a big weekend for Kimi, announcing his retirement and then announcing he was leaving the circuit. It's like, whoa, you really retired, man. You just didn't even wait till the end of the season. But obviously Kimi had that little issue, which is a shame because maybe it wasn't a shame. I don't know. Would Kimi have said anything different than he would any other weekend? Yeah, right. People were like, oh, thank God I got COVID. I don't have to answer any questions about what I'm going to do after I retire from Formula One, Yeah,
truth be known, he probably liked not having to face that.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought Robert actually did a really good job. He was behind the 8 ball for sure, and he's got some speed for sure. So, I think he may have to run at Monza, right? Is that right? There's a certain amount
He
of
might have
days you have to wait, so he may actually be able to get a complete weekend at Monza, which should be a decent track considering his slight handicap with his arm. It shouldn't be as interfering as a track like Zandvoort, which you're just constantly left and right and left and right.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Yeah,
because Kimi went in for his test. It says positive. He was like,
how the that's possible?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't ask me. Let's see. Antonio Giovinazzi slowly drifted backwards from an otherwise very impressive qualifying performance. So he had a great qualifying, but then he went backwards. He had that puncture, though, Paul, and that meant that he had a completely unscheduled stop. That left him drifting down to 14th on the day. It's unfortunate because he'd been running in the top 10, born from that really good qualifying result that he had. Looked set for a decent day, and that just kind of scuttled the effort.
Yeah, I think he shuffled back a little bit, back to 10th or something.
Yeah, it was 10th. Yeah, I think so.
And then just kind of stayed there, and then a puncture, and that, nothing you do. Track position is everything at this track for sure. So I was kind of pretty disappointed with his finishing position, considering how well he had qualified. You were hoping for more, looking for more. And ultimately, of course, it just didn't happen. But he was, I think, pace-wise, even without, I'm still not sure he would have still be able to keep that car in the top 10, really. I think the qualifying was an anomaly, and his race pace was the normal race pace of that car.
And he is driving for a job.
Not sure he has a job now.
I don't know, but we do know that Valtteri Bottas is going to Alfa Romeo next year on a multi-year deal, Paul.
Yep. Good.
Yeah,
I mean, we think Russell's better than him, right? But Valtteri is a very, very good driver, considering you're comparing him to Lewis Hamilton. Tough, very tough to compare to.
Yeah.
But he's definitely worthy of a very good driver in Formula One still, Yeah, and a breath of fresh air may help him, So he's not being held back by the cloud of Lewis Hamilton anymore. It's probably most likely going to be Bottas's team, So I think, it could work out for him. I can see, you said, I'm very excited about challenge. I could actually probably believe it, actually.
Yeah, I can too, and he returns. He's worked with Fred Vasseur before, back in the junior days, with the ART team. And I feel like, it's the Barrichello syndrome, to be honest with you. I think, like Rubens, I think he may end up finding that being the prime driver at a smaller team is better than being a wingman to Lewis at a top team. Yeah, you aren't going to have the race wins and stuff like that, but you have more of a team around you. You're building, you're trying, there's a bigger challenge there, and you're an integral part and a very appreciated, not that Valtteri wasn't appreciated in Merck, of course he was, but it's all about Lewis, at the end of the day.
I mean, he's a 7-time champion. He's a 7-time champion. To be that way, right? So,
it has to be that way. And it's not undeserved. Lewis deserves that attention.
Right.
But I think anyone that's in that place, the person that changes, the only person that's ever going to change that at Mercedes is the person that outruns Lewis. The person that puts Lewis on notice and can do that. And unfortunately, that is a very tall measuring stick for anyone to do. And it'll be interesting to see if George can do it. But for Valtteri, I agree with you. I think it's a good move. I would love to see the second seat go to Mick Schumacher. I'd love to see them move him in with Valtteri. I think it'd be great.
Yep. I think he would very much like that too. If nothing else, just to get away from Mazepin.
I know, just get away from Mazepin and all the.
Evidently, those guys do not get along at all, which is. I mean, we knew that was going to be tough.
Yeah, I don't think. I think we knew that nobody was going to get along with Mazepin.
No.
I'll tell you a great driver lineup: Lance Stroll and Mazepin.
Oh my God!
Could you imagine that driver lineup? I mean, that would be just. Oh.
I want it now. What's the matter with those twats down there?
That would be hilarious.
Yeah. That would. Can you imagine?
No. That'd be amazing. Oh boy! All right, let's talk about Williams. You've got George Russell at DNF, Nicholas Latifi down in P16. George had a tough weekend, and it looked like to me, I don't know, this is total guesswork on my part, Paul, but It just seemed like to me on Saturday that both the drivers might be overdriving their cars a little bit based on the success they had. They're all pumped. The adrenaline's going. We're punching above our weight. We're the plucky little underdog team that's moving forward. It's exciting, and both cars crash on Saturday.
Yeah.
And that meant a lot of work for that poor team to do, and to get the cars ready for Sunday, they did. George had a time penalty. He's, again, pushing really hard. Time penalty for speeding in the pit lane, was running Wistrel up until that point, then retired the car with gearbox issues, and then Latifi had to change his front wing. He started from the pit lane. So unless you were in a Red Bull, making your way up through the midfield from pit lane was always going to be hard. He did manage to get by the Haas duo, but that was it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Williams was fairly handy. You know, I mean, Russell was in 11th most of the time, right? And he was, and Lance couldn't figure a way to get around him. So I think the Williams was a pretty decent car. I agree. Obviously, in the qualifying, I think they were both pushing for Q3, and there was a chance that was going to happen. And you know, whether the wind was wrong or whatever, but they just went just that little bit over that limit, and the car kind of behaved the same way for both of them at the same point. So it was a little foible about the car that ultimately ended up in those crashes. But I thought the Williams was actually pretty strong, and Latifi's doing a decent job, and he was moving up a little bit. But in the end, obviously that 5-second penalty just put paid to everything, and whether or not Russell did have a gearbox penalty, I don't know, gearbox problem or not, but obviously his day was scuppered at that point.
Yeah, well, was he care? He's going to Mercedes.
That's right.
Let's see. Finally, Haas, Mick Schumacher, P18, Nikita Mazepin, DNF. The battle of words has now spilled over to the battle on track for Nikita and Mick, as the two were going at it, hammer and tongs, and Schumacher was not too happy about Mazepin's defensive moves. Mazepin not happy about Schumacher passing him on the final quali lap. Mick said he had an issue with the front wing and finished last, while Mazepin was forced to retire due to a hydraulic issue, leaving Gunther to say that, oh, yeah, well, we'll talk about it. We'll get it all worked out. So.
Yeah, I mean, you see stuff that Mazepin does, and it's very amateur and it is dangerous. Some of those moves, he makes them very late. And I don't think he's really under the microscope that much. I think people are, because of he's in the slowest car in the field, right? So it's not affecting anybody else other than his teammate in the other slowest car in the field.
Right.
But some of the moves he makes, how late, and his erratic behavior is pretty dangerous. I'm not enjoying his demeanor or his tactics, quite honestly. I don't think it. I don't care how much money his dad has. I don't think he's long for Formula One. I think something's going to happen, and Formula One are going to make Mazepin leave. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with. I think some of those defensive moves really late and pretty
I definitely
erratic.
don't want his dad to take over the Haas team.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that happen. I think that'll be a fly-by-night Formula One team that'll end up disappearing in the end very quickly if that happens.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, let's hand out some awards, shall we?
Let's do it.
First award that we always hand out is Move of the Race.
Seriously, Todd?
Yes. Move of the race. All right, Paul, who'd you have move of the race?
I got Fernando. I thought,
nice.
I said I really enjoyed watching some of the in-car stuff and the battling there at the beginning, and I think what Alonso did at the beginning was just a great
Pure Alonso.
Yeah. First lap, just beautiful stuff. Love it.
Keep in mind, Alonso spent a little time in Indy, so he's got that banking down a little bit.
Right.
It wasn't no challenge for him. He knows how to use it.
Yeah, it's true.
That was great. My move, tactically, I like Red Bull's move of putting the hards on and calling Merck's bluff on the mediums. I thought that was really good. And I think the move of the race was as brilliant as Mercedes is in their strategy, and they are. And Red Bull has got caught out on strategy a few times. And, you and I have talked about that. And so they didn't put a foot wrong strategy-wise. And they only had one car, and it was Max. And they didn't have Sergio to run tail gunner. And two Mercs attacking him. They threw everything in the kitchen sink at Max and Red Bull responded brilliantly. So I think that was the move of the race for me. It was great.
Oh, very nice.
All right, next up is Donkey of the Race. right. Who'd you go with?
I went with the Merc Tactics. As much as you kind of gave it to Red Bull for move of the race, I'm going to say the donkey was their tactics. It wasn't egregious or anything, but it was just wrong enough to always leave Lewis hunting for lap time. He just couldn't squeeze out of that car, honestly. So I think the worst one was them throwing him out there in amongst the traffic. That's something they definitely have ability to foresee, and they did it anyway. So
yeah, even Lewis radioed. So why'd you put me out on this traffic, man?
Yeah.
Come on, man. Yeah. Well, I was like, understood, Lewis. No, I want an answer now. Call Brad.
Yeah. Call Brad. Let's have a meeting right now. Yeah. I got my Zoom on my steering wheel. Let's notch this thing out.
Let's just get Brad on there. Yeah, Lewis was nonplussed.
Not good enough, damn it! Not good enough.
He was not happy. Yeah, so I give it to Mazepin for balking Seb during qualifying and just in general driving erratic and when he was trying to defend. I just thought, what a ragged weekend and what a ragged man.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Dude.
No business. There's so many good drivers out there. It's such a shame. He's filling one of those seats.
Albon, could be in there.
Yep. There's a lot of guys.
Yeah, a lot of guys. Yeah, right. So Nikita, just next time, just I don't know, be better.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So then that leaves us drive the race.
We'll do it live.
Yes. So, Paul, who'd you go with? Drive of the race?
I went with Alonso again, as he did it on the first lap and he did it on the last lap. And he, as we talked about how he used his tires and didn't feel under pressure from Ocon, who's shouting, he's so slow. It's like he's doing it for a reason, you nitwit. Right. So, just the how the whole is played out for Alonso was all about Alonso's brain up here and his skill behind the wheel, right? From the first lap move to how he could run a stint on the tires and how that came about. He was able to then get that one Ferrari from Sainz at the end and score 6th place instead of probably a 7th, right?
So, right. That's great. I gave it to Mazepin. No, I didn't. I gave it to Pierre Gasly. It's an obvious choice. I don't know how everyone saw it differently because I think getting that AlphaTauri in the qualifying position he did and racing to P4, it's just a brilliant race.
Yep.
In a car that probably didn't have a whole lot of business being there, fighting for best of the rest. And he's
single-handedly scoring the points of that team.
Single-handedly,
impressively.
Yeah. Yuki's back here having a meltdown and F-bombing the team and F-bombing Franz Toast and it's just crazy. And then you got Pierre who's just getting it done. Just brilliant. All right, let's do some mailbag.
You got mail.
All right, Pat Goodman sent a very, very good question. And Pat, my disclaimer on this is I honestly don't know the answer to your question.
But we're going to chat about it anyway.
But we're going to chat about it, and we're going to try to just deduce some logic. And but I'm no Adrian Newey. But I'm also banking on some of our listeners who might comment in the comment section of this podcast on our website to what they think. But anyway, it's a great question. So Pat asked this, dear Todd and Paul. He said, I have 2 questions, one for Paul and the second for both of you. So Paul, here's your question.
Slept being on mastermind.
See how I get out of this one?
What's your chosen subject? Formula One intricate aerodynamics. Okay, go.
I'll take Formula One for 800. I'll take Formula One Aero. No, I'll take the mind of Adrian Newey for 800. I'll take the Kawanda effect for 200. So notice that the first question is your question because wisely Pat knows I wouldn't have the foggiest idea. So well done to you, Pat.
I would either. I'll give it a go, eh?
You're going to give it a go. All right. As all true real men of Essex do. During the Q2 red flag An image of the front wing, and I think he's talking about the Red Bull here. An image of the front wing showed the driver's right side of the wing's center made from different carbon fiber laminates of the progressively finer weave. For example, emulating like shark skin banned years ago. The driver's mirror's left side was a flat layer of some ribs. Further, the deflecting vane near the top of the nose on the right would deflect much less air than the left. Is this a difference between the left and right sides of the car due to the asymmetry of the turning forces in the track? If not, why the difference? Paul, tough question. Talk us through it.
Oh, I don't know exactly, as we said, but just going back to first off, I would never perceive any team changing the aerodynamic surfaces from a left side to a right side for any predominant corner or track that has more lefts or rights. There, we certainly do that with setups sometimes at a track that has more rights than lefts. But there's, the whole aerodynamic profile, air going over the car. You can't play that game of slowing it down one side or the other to try and get some kind of extra downforce. It's just not going to happen.
In order to get the total balance of that car, Paul, that car is going through the air. If you've got one side of the car that's going through the air slightly, the air's going over the car slightly at a different speed than the right side, you've got an imbalance, don't you know?
Imbalance, yeah. So that doesn't make any sense to me. Obviously, we know there's different weaves of carbon fiber that flex at different rates. And that definitely, like a front wing will flex more at one point, or wherever the team want that wing to flex under its maximum pressure, that definitely happens. There's definitely changes in surfaces of maybe one piece from the left side to the right side, but that would be identical on the other side of the car also. Let's just say if there's a rough side and a smooth side, you got two pods on the side of the car. The rough sides would be both on the inside and the smooth sides would be both on the outside. I can see that happening, but I definitely can't see there being a whole different surface change and carbon fiber change from a left pod to a right pod or whatever. So I'm not sure what we saw there. I'd love to know what exact car. If it was the Red Bull, that's great. I'll try and go back and look at that. But definitely under the setup and aerodynamic profile of a car, you'd never want to imbalance a car in that way, because all you're doing then is one of them's not as good as the other, right?
Yeah, right.
And you're always trying to maximize. So you're not going to take one away from the other to balance out the next. So I don't think that's why that is. So we'd have to look further into it and have a bigger brain than mine to figure it out. But I don't believe his theory of why that would happen would actually be something any F1 team would want to go about.
Yeah, I'm not an aerodynamicist, and Adrian Newey is a genius, and I don't know what he's doing with the car. Maybe he can stall the air on one side, but then behind it, it's actually speeding it up more than who knows? The guy can see air, so I don't know what they're doing if it is the Red Bull. But yeah, if you've got some pictures in the mailbag section, post a picture of that, Pat. I'd like to see it, because I missed it this weekend. And like I said, I'm not an aerodynamicist or engineer.
Keen eyes, these Parc Fermé.
Yes, very keen eyes over the Hawkeye view of Pat Goodman. So I didn't see that. But anyway, if any of you are listening and you saw that, or what they're up to, let us know, because I missed it. His follow-up question is, we begin to feel the constant Red Bull team complaints about Mercedes, for example, pay for damages, crashes, 2 races in a row, slow out lap, etc., are bad for the sport. Is it, after all, F1 and not WWE? My wife suggested a name change for the team principal to Christian Weiner. Zing!
One of your favorite people in the paddock there, isn't he, Tom?
Yeah. It's tomorrow.
It is funny someone put out there, where Christian's talking about, well, I hope Toto doesn't block Albon, jumping into Williams. Like, what the hell? You're blocking him from driving one of your own cars.
Yeah, right.
You've got 4 cars on the grid. He's only got 2.
Yeah, right. He's like, well, Albon really deserves a ride. Oh, you got 2 cars. You got 4 cars.
And give it to him. Yeah, you got a seat there.
Yeah, kick Yuki out and put him back in. Yuki's not getting it done this year, so put him in.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says, do the FIA and F1 have guidelines about public speaking? And if so, should they be enforced in this case? No, I don't know. I think there are some general broad guidelines about bringing the sport into disrepute. I don't think Christian complaining about Mercedes taking two of his cars out in a race would qualify for that. I mean, if I'm Christian, I'd be mad about that too. Christian's an acquired taste. As is Gunther Steiner, as a lot of them. I joke, and I have a lot of fun with Christian about when I wished him a happy birthday a day early, and he barked at me and said, "It's tomorrow." I joke. I think, to be honest, I would love to sit down and have dinner with Christian and have a couple bottles of wine, and I think, he'd be brilliant, to be honest with you. The stories, his knowledge of Formula One and racing in general, and all of the details. Imagine the stories he could tell.
He's a clever guy, and he
uses
the press on the outside.
He does
as a tool.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, and I'm sure deep down inside, Toto would admit he probably picked up a move or two from Christian on how to do that. And Toto, a wickedly sharp guy in his own right, and so
Cuddly Bear Toto.
Yeah.
Gives everyone a hug. Yeah.
But equally, I like Christian a lot. I'd love to have dinner with him, but I like Toto a lot. I'd love to imagine having dinner with Toto and just talking through Mercedes and what he does, for the team and how he turned that team into a juggernaut. So no, I think they all have their foibles and imperfections for sure. But you also have to kind of keep in mind that Christian's at the head of a multi-million-dollar empire here in Formula One with the brand Red Bull, with incredibly high expectations from Helmut Marko and Dieter Mateschitz. And so I think, he's a pretty seasoned veteran in this game, understands it incredibly well. But certainly, when something untoward happens, he gets pissed off about it. He's not happy about it. And to be honest with you, I don't think Toto is either when that happens. So I think the one that holds his cards pretty close to his vest is Mattia Binotto.
Right.
You just don't see that guy
still
rattle. Yeah, apparently so. I thought he was zooming in for the races, but he was there this weekend.
Okay.
So who knew? But he holds his cards very close to his chest. But I am kind of interested, like Marcin at Alpine. I kind of like that guy. I like his approach. I think Andreas Seidel's doing a fabulous job over at McLaren.
You like Vassar?
Yeah, I do. I like Fred. Freddie's good. It's kind of fun to watch some of these newer team bosses, Capito, who it was interesting because just how animated he was, when they had the podium in Q3 a week or two ago. And so anyway, it's been kind of fun to see the new team bosses come in too, but anyway.
Speaking of that, one thing, okay, so I was in San Antonio, so I don't have ESPN at my house, but I had it in the hotel room, so I watched the full Sky coverage, not just so much better than the F1 TV one.
I'm telling you.
Oh my God. I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I'm missing so much by watching the F1 TV things.
Well, the thing that makes it difficult is, and this is why I didn't renew the F1 TV, because if you're just going to show the Sky thing, then show the whole Sky broadcast. Because what you miss out is the side-by-side cutaways, like they'll have cameras in the pit lane zoomed in on front wings and brakes, and Ted's talking through some of the shit. You don't see any of those cutaways on the F1 TV. You just see the main feed. Yeah. And so whenever Sky does these special features and, inset small picture-in-picture with interviews with drivers, you just miss all of that.
Right.
You get the audio.
Pre and post also is a lot
the pre
better,
and post. Yeah. So it's very tough. I mean, Sky have really raised the bar with their F1 channel and the way that they cover the sport, and it's very difficult to live up to that. To be honest with you,
Even Nico Rosberg wasn't really irritating me this weekend.
no, I mean he got kind of pointed with Toto there after the race.
Yeah, didn't he?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was crazy.
Yeah, kind of kicking him in the shins.
Why'd you screw up Lewis's race like that? What kind of
Yeah.
cool was that in strategy?
I know.
And
Yeah.
It was like, boom.
Yeah, Toto was like, "Who the hell let this guy in?" Yeah, didn't he leave the sport?
Get
What's
me
he
the
doing?
spray. Get this thing off my. Yeah, it was pretty animated by.
Yeah, I think
funny.
at times Nico just has no filter. you
Yeah,
know? You know, and that's probably. I mean, he brings up good questions. You got to hand it, but boy, it's delivery.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one. I thought JB did a great job, and I keep going back to nothing against Karun. I know Karun's I'm sure a lovely guy and all that. I think Karun says a whole lot of things.
He says a lot of words.
He says a lot of words and a lot of things that aren't.
He's soaring at that wheel a lot. He's doing a lot of that.
Yeah, it's like
for no good reason. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not really. Yeah, so but when Ant or PDR talk, I absolutely love it when they're on the broadcast or doing color, and because those guys are spot on, and I really enjoy that. So, to your point, it's worth picking up ESPN, Paul.
It is. It is. I'm sold.
Yep. So anyway, all right. Well, that's it. That's what we think of this race. But Paul, we've got another race to do in just a few days' time at Monza.
I know.
Otherwise known as the Temple of Speed, Paul.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm going to be at another Temple of Speed in Laguna Seca this weekend too.
Ooh, the corkscrew.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to be doing there?
IMSA?
Yeah. Two cars?
2 cars.
2 cars.
Yikes. It's going to be something.
All right. Who's going to win?
One whole new team, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it literally is. It's a new car with basically all the members on it are new people. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how we work that dynamic running 2 cars versus 1. It's been not easy doing one, but it's a one singular focus, right?
Right.
So now we've got 2 cars, which the second car can be handy for strategy, a la Bottas or something like that.
Right.
But also we've got to make sure we don't take the focus that's been our success point so far, which is why we're so high up in championship, getting results. We can't let that second car affect the results of the first car.
No, the priority's got to be 23.
So so let's hope. Fingers crossed we don't mess it all up.
And it's tough because Ian's your buddy driving the other car. You want Ian to win.
Oh,
of
yeah,
course.
sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
but the 23 is the priority of the championship.
It has to be,
Yeah, right. And I'm sure Ian would be the first guy to say that.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, if you're looking for other alternative racing options than IMSA from a Laguna,
Right.
and of
It'll
course
be later on in the day.
Yes. Yeah, you'll be awake by then.
Yeah.
So, all right. Be sure to stop by the website, theparcfermé.com. Share your opinion. Just do it. Decorum and civility, as always. Thank you so much to our Patreon supporters and those of you who signed up this week to support us. We could not and would not do this podcast without you. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to our website, theparcfermé.com. On the right-hand side, it says support us. Just click on that, and it'll take you to a couple different ways you can support us for as little as $1 a month. So it is a huge, huge help, and it all adds up, and we couldn't be more grateful for that. If you like the podcast, go over to iTunes, give us some love, give us a good rating over there. And yes, folks, we are posting these. I'm recording them. They're not fancy. There's no cool graphics. I don't have all kinds of cutaways and pictures. Well, except for Paul.
Yeah, I got my hand puppets over here.
Yeah, that's basically it. So basically, it's I'm just recording these Zoom calls, 2 talking heads, but you can see this podcast on our YouTube channel, and so you're more than welcome to either watch this podcast and see our exaggerated arm movements, or you can listen to the podcast. Either way. But all right. Well, until next week when we come back to do this all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.